So I'm going to throw the meeting open to discussion now. So I'm hoping that we will be looking at what are we going to do? What's the way forward? How are we going to form a new mass working party and overcome the divisions on the left? So I ask if you want to speak, if you could put your electronic hand up and I will take the comrades in turn. And if we could keep our remarks to about 5 minutes each, please, to give lots of people a chance to say something. So who would like to come in? We're going to invite Roger Silverman to sum up at the end of the discussion, but we obviously need to have the discussion first. Anybody want to ask any questions or disagreements or? Right, we've got a speaker. Salvinda, would you like to come in, unmute and come in, please? Yeah, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah, we
Yes, okay, I've unmuted. Yeah, my name is Salvinda Dillon. I've been involved with the Indian Work Association group, and as well as stood the candidate in the Ealing South area as a council election, the independent and a parliamentary election, also in Australia in the Broad Alliance. Now, I just want to share some experience what happened in Australia. It's the same thing with the topic we're discussing, that the left was very much divided, and there was a great need to get together. And what we did was similar to what Dave Hill was saying, a great need to build the United Front. And in order to start building the United Front, we had a mass meeting in which we all came up with ideas that what is a program around which we're going to unite. You'd be surprised why that meeting happened. There was a big conflict between two left-wing organizations, even a physical conflict, and we were disgusted by that, which serves capitalism. So it was very important that we had a 3-day conference. The first thing we said is, okay, we stop fighting with each other. We want to unite on political unity. See, there's ideological differences and political unity. We may come from different ideological backgrounds. Somebody may be Marxist-Leninist, somebody may be believing in Trotsky, but that's not the issue. The issue is we represent the working class interest. And what was the program that we unite the working class? It was against war, it's against privatization, against racism, because the Iraq war was quite going on at the time. And so we spent first discussing what is a program around which we want to build the United Front. And then Pauline Hanson was coming with all the right-wing ideas. The right wing is emerging. Pauline Hanson, like you have the Reform Party here. And out of that, what we said is, okay, we're going to confront that. There's going to be elections. And how do we pick up a candidates who will actually take on Pauline Hanson? So out of that program, first of all, we formed a broad program against racism, against war, and then we allowed everybody to come up with who will actually stand up for that program, who will fight for that program, which we all made up ourselves together collectively. And a lot of organizations put forward their candidates, myself included, and also Jenny Monroe, who was a leading international human rights activist. And after the candidates, we came to a selection process. Here's a list of candidates who want to fight. Now let's have democratically elect out of that list who's the most suitable candidates. And it emerged. I'm not flattering myself. Myself was one and Jenny Monroe was the other. You can check it out under the Broad Alliance, which is the unifying United Front. We emerged as a result of those efforts. And then the whole left, as Dave Hill said, put their weight behind those two candidates. And we did pretty well because we had a very short time. So what Dave Hill was saying was basically United Front, embracing all the left-wing organizations, embracing the trade unions, embracing the migrant communities around a program. And just as on May Day, we got a program, we celebrate May Day. It doesn't have to be just May Day, it could be an ongoing effort to unite around our working class issue, but it has to be led by working class politics. And so we took on Pauline Hanson, we made big headways. All I want to say is that what Dave Hill just said and other comrades saying, it's very, very important we build the United Front. Otherwise, as some speakers mentioned, they're going to go for the trade unions, they're going to go for the communists, they're going to go for the left wing and then wipe everybody out. So it's very critical, very important work all our comrades are doing here. And all I want to say is express my full solidarity from the Indian Workers on GB for your efforts, as well as we have a small beginning, like the British Work Association. The idea is not to form a party with the British. We're not saying British Work Association is a party, but it shares the same sort of aspirations you have to build the United Front, which is very much needed. So around the program, politics comes first. And lastly, I'll finish. We achieved so much in that short time. Even in the it's called it's near Sydney University, another university. We had a joint room of all the left wing where we had joint printing facilities, joint discussions, where we could have air our ideological differences, but whenever we fought out campaigns or rallies, we were one united force. So that's what I want to share with you. Let's do that, and congratulations to all the efforts. And as Steve already mentioned, sometimes we do put cart before the horse. We need to work on the issues, build a program, build the United Front through those efforts, and out of that will emerge the Workers' Party, rather than declaring. And I've worked with Respect. I was one of the leading people there as well. When Respect was formed, we made big headway, and there was a split, unfortunately, between two groups, and we didn't like that split. It weakened our efforts. So sometimes necessary to build from the grassroots, the working class movement, and out of that, workers' democracy, let people decide the program, let the membership decide who the leading figure should be in that way. So workers' democracy instead of bourgeois democracy.
Thanks very much, Salvinder, and thanks for joining us this evening. Right, we'll move on to John
Thank you
Dunn,
very
please.
much for the opportunity.
Yes, very good to have you here. So we'll move on to John Dunn. Can everybody else start putting their hands up, please, and ask some questions or say something?
We couldn't hear Ian Hodson, who's a first-class socialist and great leader of his trade union. And I think so far the only one who's come anywhere near has been Steve Edley. Because I'm sick of this term, unify the left, unify the left. I don't know what the left is anymore. Is it the grooming cult of what was once socialist appeal, now the revolutionary, whoever they are? Is it the various Trotskyist death cults, as I refer to them? Is it the likes of Novara Media and these well-meaning middle classes that Steve talked about? I've got nothing in common with these people, nothing in common whatsoever. People, you know, especially the so-called left groups who only want to know working class activists when they can sell them a paper, get them to sign a petition, get a donation for the fighting fund, etc., etc. And you know, these people, I spend a lot of time, I'm very lucky, talking to real people outside of any bubble. And I think that the people that something will be built from were the people who never bothered to vote, the people who thought a plague on all your houses, the people who were way in front of us and who I think are ready for an alternative. And I don't even like the phrase right wing anymore, because people, you know, those of us, I supported the Brexit referendum result. I'm a right winger apparently for that, because the EU, according to many of our middle class friends, is this great socialist institution. So I'm not interested at this stage in forming a party. I'm not interested. I think we need the movement strengthening. It's only just getting up off its knees after 40 years. Very few trade unions are fighting back. Perhaps Unite and ASLEF are the two exceptions. And we most definitely don't want a messiah. You know, the old idea that if Corbyn did this and if Corbyn did that, we could start singing old Jeremy Corbyn again and life would be rosy. So I think we have to show a bit of patience. And where the movement is active, be it in a community organisation, be it a tenants organisation, a trade union action, that's the unity we build, not be pulling all these myriad of evangelistic I can't say vanguard groups who actually think the working class is composed of layers. And if you get this advanced layer, then things trickle down. It's nonsense. I have unlearned just about everything I've learned in this in such groups, and I think I'm a better class fighter and a better understander of our class than I was when I was involved. So sorry if it seems a bit negative, but stop looking in the wrong direction. Stop chasing on the tails of these has-beens who never were, and let's build the movement first.
Okay, thanks, John. I think that pretty much illustrates, the purpose of this meeting is to answer John's question: is how do we create a working class movement with chosen leaders and not messiahs? I can't see any other hands up at the moment. Would anybody? They're going up now. Darren Gulpin, please. You are still muted. Yeah, we can't hear you, Darren.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Yeah.
Magic, thank you. Hello. So for those of you, if you don't know me, I'm Darren Galpin, and I'm an active socialist on the Isle of Wight. And I think somebody commented about not wanting, saying we shouldn't be on the tail of movements, we shouldn't tail movements. But I think some of the time you have to. Certainly at present, we don't have a mass socialist party. I mean, I went along to the local ferry user group protest on Saturday. It was their second protest of 3 scheduled for this summer. The newly elected Labour MP, who, as Labour candidates go, is not a bad guy, was there. The Green candidate was there, again, quite well, generally sort of respected across the broader left spectrum on the island. And when you go there, I was talking to people about public ownership of the ferries. I think most of the people there agree with it, but you're not in a position at the moment to say, well, we should abandon the Labour Party, we should, the Green Party are kind of false prophets, they're just liberals, and that we should have a new party, and that with a radical socialist program, because people won't really want to listen to that at present. I think we're still, a lot of the time, it is intervening. It is about actually kind of getting to know people and listening as well. I think you've got to kind of, I think in the long term, you've got to kind of go and find those people who see, within those campaigns, find those people who are more keen to get involved with something that's more joined up, and see the need for a new party. And I talked to one of the, with the ferry campaign, talked to the principal organizer about it. But a lot of the time you're just dealing with human beings. I think she's an individual who's kind of primarily concerned with the ferry. She's ex-Labour. She's interested in some of the other campaigns. She's been along to the annual the weekly Gaza gathering that we do in the town square. But I think it's still, a lot of the time there is a softly approach. And it may well be the case that we have to kind of, I agree with the assessment about saviour figures, but it may well be the case that it is someone like I don't think necessarily a Corbyn, because I think he will probably, he still wants to work within the Labour Party system, but I think it may well be, it might well be an individual figure emerges. Maybe Mick Lynch will bring the RMT back into sort of funding political parties and funding election campaigns, as they did with Tusk, but with more kind of successful, viable candidates. And people may see Mick Lynch as the saviour, and that's, you know, what we have to do. I think, although we've got, I think it's important to kind of have that analysis and perspective and you know, understand what we want. And I kind of agree very much with a lot of those kind of assessments that have been made. I think we still have to be quite flexible and, you know, think for ourselves. I think that's probably what separates us. I think, you know, myself, I was, you know, I was in the Socialist Party. A lot of other people who have come from some of the Trotskyist organisations, and I think what kind of marks us out as independent socialists, like the previous contributor said, you know, like we've learned to kind of see things differently and kind of think for ourselves more, rather than you know, rather than kind of regurgitate, you know, a set of perspectives from whichever, you know, kind of small Marxist group we belong to. I'll leave it there. Thank you, comrades.
Right, thanks very much, Darren. Very neatly in 5 minutes. We can move on to Howard now, please. Howard, you need to. We can't seem to. Are you speaking? We can't seem to hear you. Oh dear.
Pam, you've asked me to lower my hand. Colin McGowan.
Yeah, I've just asked Howard to speak, but we can't actually hear him. I think he's speaking. Howard, you might need to leave the meeting and come in to get your sound back. If you do, I'll bring you straight in. Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, I'll invite Colin McGowan to speak now while we're waiting for Howard. Colin, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, hi. And thank you for letting me speak. Listening to Selvinda and John, they're absolutely spot on with, you know, where John was saying about we need to get everything sort of laid out first before we start running ahead. And Selvinda was absolutely right. We need, if we do land up getting a decent workers' party, we need some where it's properly elected and not dictated to. And I totally agree with that. I think looking through the people that are here, one of the things I feel strongly about is that we need to get the younger element on board, because at the end of it all, we're all quite, some of us is quite old, and I'll put my hand up to it, you see. And the reality is, we're trying to work things as all unions and such like should do, for the people coming behind us to make sure it's all set perfectly for them. And at the moment, our political system isn't fit for purpose. You've got the Tories, you've got Labour and Lib Dems. They're all from the same pot now. And the worrying thing for me with Starmer being in there is, whereas there's a few people I know on here who have demonstrated against the onslaught in Gaza and Palestine, and I can safely say I feel that Starmer will make that into a hate speech and ban people from having a voice. And that worries me. Because people have been thrown out of the Labour Party for pro-Palestinian support. I know I'm one of them. And I just don't trust the man. Anyway, whatever we decide this evening, I'm more than happy to follow it along and make sure that we can get something which is coherent and something we can build on, like everybody's saying. So I'll shut up now and let somebody else have a word in.
Okay, thanks, Colin. I mean, we are trying to sort of get a kind of a bit of a committee together that will sort of kick these things off. So please put your name down for it if you'd like to be involved. Right, Howard's back with us. Howard, do you want to have another try, Howard G? Let's have another go, see if you can unmute yourself. Right. Oh, I'm really sorry, but we still can't hear you. Oh, sorry. We'll have to move on to the next speaker. Jason. Okay, Jason.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, just the usual unmuting problem. But yeah, well, hello, comrades. Jason Toynbee here. I'm down in Brighton with Dave Hill. Was involved with Dave in the campaign for Tanush Kumar, the independent left candidate in this city. And just a couple of things, really. First of all, interest bearing on what Dave was saying about sectarianism. Other comrades have said the same thing. I'm an ex-member of Socialist Alternative. I left actually the week before the election, partly because of my involvement in the campaign in the city for Tanush Kumar, but also just because, you know, I've just had 20 years of becoming increasingly pissed off with democratic centralism, in other words, centralism. And so for me, this has been an incredibly liberating experience getting involved in this campaign. And now coming on to this meeting, it feels very good and very open. But I note that there are really big issues, and comrades have touched on quite a few of these. But I want to bring up one which I think maybe hasn't quite been discussed so much yet, which is to do with the nature of the coalitions we're getting involved in with an independent campaign. And I'm sure it varies a lot around the country. It'll be different in different towns and cities. But in Hove, the constituency where we had our independent campaign, we have and Dave characterised that, I think, very well in terms of the variety of constituencies that were involved in that campaign. But I'd say that what's interesting, having been involved in a Trotskyist organisation for years, is I was shocked by the degree of political naivety and the range of political views. And of course, you know, I've gone from one extreme to the other, if you like, very quickly over the course of a few days, coming across this incredible range. Now, that's a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing, because it means that we have the possibility of building, precisely because we're open. And I think Felicity's points about the need for openness and the need for continuing debate really come to the fore here. In our case, we're going to need to work with and work through a whole bunch of different political notions, ranging from what seems to me to be not exactly anarchistic, but certainly strongly decentralist. There's a strong tendency in Brighton and Hove to what I'd call localism. You know, a great deal of experience and expertise around local issues, but nevertheless, a kind of reluctance really to think too clearly about getting involved in a national campaign, getting involved in a national organisation like this one, a campaign for a new mass workers' party. That seems to be something which is not naturally coming to people. And it isn't so much an issue of sectarianism. I don't think people think that they're proponents of that argument are sectarian necessarily, so much as proposing something which is simply unworkable. There's a kind of skepticism about the possibility of a national party and national organisation, not coming from, as I say, the experience of the old left, the experience of sectarianism and absurd competition between, you know, the narcissism of small differences, as somebody called it recently, but because they just don't have any faith in big politics, if you like. So that's where I think we've got a challenge, certainly in our area. It's to build political consciousness without being patronising. We've got a lot to learn from young people, but it's that process of bringing these constituencies together around a class politics, which can also speak to oppression and issues of today. Obviously, climate change being right at the front there. Thanks, comrades.
Thanks, Jason. If we can move on to Jeff Taylor, please.
Hello, comrades. I'm Oxford-based. I came into active politics relatively recently with Corbyn, or with the Corbyn project, should I say, which I stuck with for the time he was there and tried afterwards to stay and give Starmer the benefit of the doubt. And I did as much as I could to help the Labour project under Corbyn and that kind of democratic socialist project. and I went up and campaigned 3 times for Corbyn in Islington, and I'm very happy that he won. But since then, I've left the Labour Party. I've been in a couple of revolutionary Marxist organizations, and I am one of those people who stands and sells newspapers. But I'm very happy with Dave Hill from Brighton's take on things, and his advocation of the United Front. And I think this is a terrific thing. And I feel that with the Palestine Solidarity campaign here in Oxford, that has also worked brilliantly well to bring together different small parties, revolutionary parties, and also other people in a united front. And I feel that united front is absolutely necessary. And especially now that Starmer's in, there's not much hope of anything great from that quarter. But also in is the far right. We've got Nigel Farage with 5 seats now, and this is extremely worrying. We've been able, through United Front activities over a number of decades, we've in Britain been able to keep the far right pretty much down. Not me personally, but we have kept them down, and so this is new. And in Europe now, with the rise of the far right in France and in other countries, the thought of Donald Trump very likely coming back, we have got to work together to combat the racists, the far right, and Farage. The Tories are part of that project, and the Starmer's Labour also tends towards that project with racism, xenophobia against asylum seekers and so on. And I would say, whatever happens with this project for a mass party, there's one thing we can all do on the 27th of July. The 27th of July, Tommy Robinson has called again for his thugs to come out to Trafalgar Square, and he was able to mobilize 5,000 on the 1st of June. This Saturday, 27th of July, if we can mobilize and stand up to them, we keep them off the streets. And whatever we're able to do as well, parliamentarily, at least we'll keep them off the streets. And this is the 27th of July. If you go to standuptoracism.org.uk, you can find out if there's any local transport going. And this is supported by so many unions, the NEU, PCS, Unison, Unite, RMT, Fire Brigades Union, ASLEV, all the teachers' unions, Jewish Socialist Group, Corbyn's Peace for Justice, Stop the War Coalition, and others. This is something we can do immediately on 27th of July. Get your trade unionist friends out, get your workplace friends out, get everybody out on the streets to London to stand up to Tommy Robinson. If he gets 5,000 out, we need to get 10,000. We need to get 100,000 out and show the people of Britain that we will not take this kind of racism. Thank you. I'll end there.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Kate?
Oh, I've done it, have I?
You've done it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm so relieved that I know some people here, because I just got this link to this meeting. I didn't know who'd organised it, so it felt quite scary. But I know you, Pam, and quite a few of the other people. So I really don't. I can't tell anyone how to organise this new party, but I just wanted to say that I was really uplifted by what happened with the independents in the election. Before then, I felt very, very bleak, and the media totally shut out, apart from Crispin Clintoff's programme, not the Andrew Marr show, which I always go to. There was nothing really covering these independents. They didn't exist, you know. But I knew about some of these people and I was following them. So I felt like I was part of something, even though I wasn't actually very well and I couldn't go and do anything. And I was really moved by Jodie McIntyre in Yardley, who almost defeated Jess Phillips. 700, there were 700 votes between them. And I saw how she attacked him. He's a Muslim man, but he doesn't make a thing of that. I think he's got cerebral palsy. He's got a very obvious disability. He looks like someone who has nothing, but he kind of has everything. And when he spoke, you knew that he included his whole community, and he spoke about his campaign and how everyone was involved. It was a kind of united front in Yardley with kids and grandmothers and all sorts of sections of the community. And that was just amazing. And she was trying to say that these Muslim men had attacked her as a woman and intimidated her. And he just made the point that as a person with a very obvious disability and also with a person of colour, he was subject to millions of really awful messages on social media, but that's not the issue. We don't sort of compete to be a victim. We're actually fighting for something better, which is anti-war, anti-racism, redistribution of resources, a voice for people, for Gaza. And I just found that so moving. And I thought it made me feel for the first time in actuality that there was a point for having a new party. Before it seemed like a theory to me. And I actually thought there are these brave people who've got fantastic ideas, and especially the people who are so disadvantaged and are really, I feel like the true working class in a way, who are coming up from a place like Yardley and fighting back. And we need to get those people together and not lose that spirit. And I just wanted to, he said he was opening an office up and they were going to carry on that kind of work. And I think it's similar to what's been done in Newham. And I think that is the point that brings the working class together, when there are people who are prepared to fight with them and listen to them and actually feel like they belong. So that's what I just wanted to say. I was so filled with hope. Thanks.
Right, thanks very much, Kate. That's great. If we move on to Dominic now, please.
My hand.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
It's just to my mind that, there's so much been discussed tonight. But I think the basic thing is we're not talking about going out and setting up a party, at least I'm not. You're talking about setting up a movement to build a party. And I think there's a difference. And the basic thrust I think that we've got to be into is explaining and being active at the same time that the fight is against capitalism. It's not about individual issues. The individual issues are something we fight against. But we've got to explain that it's capitalism that caused these problems. And the whole thrust of capitalism at the moment is a really massive attack on the working class. And most of the trade union and labour leaders don't even mention it. It's almost a secret. It's this issue, that issue, the other issue. But why these issues? Like Conrad was talking about the ferry. The reason the ferry will be challenged, I don't know any other circumstances, is because it's not making profit or enough profit for the capitalists. That's the only reason that they cut down services and chop them off, or they've got a more profitable alternative that's not in the public interest. So I think when we've got to raise the issue that capitalism is the root of all the problems facing mankind, never mind just the working class. If you look at everything within society, whether it's climate change, whether it's starvation, whether it's all the problems facing the working class, the migration of people because of the climate change and because of wars, creating wars in Africa and other places, supported by capitalists to get the assets out of that country, whether it be gold or oil or precious metals or what have you, something that's there that they want to steal, basically. And that they're stealing the wages of the working class. They're paying the working class a pittance of the wealth that they produce. We've got to explain these things you know, as part of the problems faced by the working class and the fights that the working class are in. Because the one thing we've got, it's not masses of people, but we have got ideas and some understanding of what capitalism is about. And it's a question of explaining what capitalism is about and getting that into the class so that the class become an organisation within itself, a class within itself, not just fighting this campaign and that campaign, but fighting the whole capitalist system. It's a bit bitty, but I'll leave it there.
Thanks very much, Dominic. Nora. You're right, Nora. Can you unmute yourself, make your contribution? See your mouth moving, so I can't hear anything. So we come back to you in a minute. Yeah, Nora, we can't hear you. Ah, right, great.
Managed it. Sorry, I'm used to Microsoft Teams. Well, I'm Nora from South Yorkshire in Barnsley. I chose to live here 30 years ago when I was in a position to move and have choices, because it was the Socialist Republic. Yeah, I've found out different since I moved here. Ex-militant, ex-Labour Party, and I'm afraid ex-revolutionary, because I'm running out of time. I'm one of the oldies, and I wanted to have a revolution for my kids and grandkids, but all the left factions would just argue about who's in control. So I became beginning of an anarchist. But I heard about what happened in Bolivia, how they got rid of political parties and the people did it themselves. And what I've heard tonight has been really encouraging, because political parties might get into power, but they're only interested in the party. And I'm afraid all the different factions that became factions after militant fell apart are the same. It's all about their paper, their fighting fund. You're perfectly right, John Donne. You know what you're talking about. But in my work, I was involved in supporting patient and carer public voice in the NHS. And I learned from that when you get people with different ideas and you bring them together with a cause that they all care about, it can get round the differences. And a couple of people have said this sort of thing, and this is what we're aiming for. I think it's about accountability of elected members and within any structure, and it's about proper democracy where everybody has a voice and everybody is listened to. And what I learned in the NHS is the first thing you do, and I know it's obvious, is ground rules. So if all the groups are going to come together, you have to have ground rules and insist that everybody keeps to them. And maybe in time, people will build trust and start listening to each other and start working together without arguing all the time. I mean, I've been to Palestinian demos in Sheffield, where you've had 4 or 5 tables, all selling newspapers, all with a little A4 sheet with their potted version about what's happening in Gaza, and none of them talking to each other. And it's just ridiculous. So I'm really pleased. I don't know how I got invited to this, but I'm really pleased, and I'd like to keep in touch. But I just think it's about building trust across the different groups and stopping shouting at each other and start listening to each other and remember why we're all involved. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That's great. Thank you very much, Nora. I mean, this is only the beginning, we hope, of many meetings. We will be contacting everybody who's come on the call, and we will be staying in touch with you. So just watch out, watch your inbox, basically. Thank you. Kieran.
Yes, good evening, comrades. My name's Kieran. I'm based in Northern Ireland. And I'd just like to make some general comments and then some specific comments about this place. I mean, this is a good meeting, and a sign of a good meeting is that it throws up more questions than it provides answers. And I think that's important because there are different opinions on this call in terms of the need for, you know, a revolutionary core, a revolutionary party, people who think as revolutionaries, those who think differently, how we actually come together, what does the United Front mean? But to me, one of the things we really do need to do is to look backwards. Because most of us here are of a certain age, and we all remember the Clause 4 moment, when Clause 4 was, you know, extracted from the Labour Party constitution under Blair. That's a long time ago, it's a generation ago. And unfortunately, we have signally failed to build a broader alternative to the left of Labour. It's 2024, we have failed to do it. The first past the post system defeats us. True, but it hasn't defeated the Green Party. They've just got 4 MPs elected. Imagine if there'd been 4 socialists or MPs to the left of Labour as a group who could work together in Parliament now, the difference that could make. And unfortunately, Reform have somehow broken through the ceiling provided by the first past the post system. And we have failed to do it, and we need to learn the lessons. And that does mean looking backwards and thinking about all of the different initiatives or experiments like the Socialist Labour Party, like Respect, like others, because there are lessons, both positive and negative, from each of those initiatives. And whilst a lot that happened in the election was positive, you know, every positive contained within it is potential negatives. And the election of the 4 independents on the Gaza issue, for example, as Steve talked about in the very first contribution, you know, there are dangers contained within that too, in terms of what that vote actually represents and where those MPs may go next. Say if the Gaza war comes to an end 6 months from now or a year from now, where will those MPs be? Where did the Respect councillors go ultimately? That, you know, they didn't stay in the broad left Labour fold. You know, they moved away, unfortunately, over time. So I think we just need to come back to it. But Pam's already covered that in her last comment, that this is just the beginning, further discussions. With regard to Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, I was director of elections for a campaign in Fermanagh in South Tyrone, which is the largest constituency in Northern Ireland, one of the largest in these islands. There's only one constituency which is larger. Rural, but with 2 towns, Enniskillen and Dungannon. And Dungannon in particular is an industrial town, a working class town. We stood a candidate under the title of Cross Community Labour, and we did that purposely because left candidates in the north, generally speaking, are assumed to be of one community or the other, unless you state that you're not of one community or the other. And we did use the word Labour in the title, despite the fact that Labour in certain ways is a contaminated word. We know the reasons why, Starmerism or Blairism. But in the north, Labour, for most working class people, represents something that is different from unionism and different from nationalism, and which unites working class people. So for us, it's an important word to use. The campaign, it's kind of similar to what's been described by the comrades in Brighton and other places, in the sense that it brought together activists from different traditions, activists who come from left republicanism, Workers' Party tradition, activists who would have been involved in the Communist Party in the past, particularly activists who joined the Labour Party during the Corbyn period and have now left the Labour Party, and activists who have come through the militant Socialist Party tradition, and others, campaigners on the ground, health service campaigns, trade unionists. We didn't have the official backing of the Trades Council. The Trades Council was mentioned, but the Trades Council activists, the bulk of them, the majority, in effect, supported the campaign. Now, it was a difficult campaign. It was a hard-fought battle between unionism and nationalism, between Sinn Féin and the Us Unionist Party for the seat. Sinn Féin won through, and just to comment on Felicity's point, Felicity made the point about the Sinn Féin success, in inverted commas, in the election being a positive, I think is what Felicity meant. It's not a positive. It was communal politics, it's sectarian politics, and it's no more positive than the DUP doing well in an election. If I thought it was positive, then we wouldn't have organised a campaign and stood against Sinn Féin. Our candidate was a previous councillor, a working class activist based in Dungannon. Across the constituency, we got 1.2% of the vote. A small vote, but a modest vote, but larger than many of the left votes in England and Scotland and Wales, but still a modest vote. In Dungannon, in the working class areas of Dungannon, where he's based, where the candidate is based, and where we have support, he got 20% of the vote in those areas, which is a powerful base for the future in terms of hopefully winning a council seat. So it's important. It's important because it's that patient campaigning approach on the ground, as Dave referenced in Brighton. It's very, very important. But the politics are also very important, and we all need to cohere around a commonly agreed set of principles. I think we all know that. And in Northern Ireland, in the north, that has to be about class politics being primary, taking primacy over unionism and over nationalism, independent class politics. That's very important. Otherwise, it's a form of left nationalism or a form of left unionism, and it takes us nowhere. We intend to stand in elections to come. There won't be any more elections here now for 3 years. There'll be an assembly election and local elections in May 2027, which is quite a long time away. But we do intend to stand. And we hope that what we did in this election has raised a banner that will be noticed by activists, trade unionists and activists in the other 17 constituencies. Our hope, our aspiration would be that there would be 18 candidates across the 18 assembly areas at the next assembly election. And that's what we're hoping to achieve, and then we're trying to start those conversations now. So in many ways, our approach, I think, is similar to what companies here are thinking instinctively, but with our own nuances, our own local angles, which might be slightly different. So the campaign here, this campaign, I welcome the campaign, and I think we should talk to each other, but we will be separate for the simple reason it's a separate political jurisdiction in many different ways. So, but anyway, thanks for a good discussion. A lot of questions I have in my mind. I'll be going away thinking about them.
Thanks very much, Kieran. We've just got Alan now. There's still time for just 1 or 2 more contributions if anybody wants to say anything or ask anything. Then we'll go into the sum up. So, Alan, would you like to go ahead, please?
Sure. Thank you, Pam. My name's Alan Story. I live in the village or town of Woodbridge, Suffolk. Too rich, too white, too right wing. Anyways, I'm moving to Norwich next week, and I have good feelings about that. I'm really enthused about this meeting, I have to say. It's really I feel quite isolated out here in Suffolk. I used to live in Sheffield for 8 years. And I'd really love to hear all these, this is all about Northern Ireland. It's really kind of quite uplifting. And Dave and Steve, it's really, really great to be here. I'd just like to make a couple of points. I was involved in a group called Learning Our History, which what we did was we studied a number of left-wing groups since, last 25 years, and had developed very good articles, which are published in a thing called The Left Lane, a little Substack that I set up in January on the Scottish Socialist Party, a very good piece on that, and Tommy Sheridan, all that happened there. It's not really maybe too well known, and a Scottish fellow did it, Gregor Gall. We had a piece on respect, which is okay, it could have been better, the Socialist Alliance. I did then a 3-party, I used to be an investigative journalist. I did a 3-part expose of the Workers' Party, the outfit run by Galloway. And I have to say personally, not in a sectarian way, I'm very glad he lost. I think he's a complete tosser, really bad person to be a voice of the left. Anyways, because I talked to like some former members of the Workers' Party. You should see what it's really like inside that party. Like that George Galway sets policy on his Facebook page. I mean, it's really a terrible lesson in how not to build a party. I'd like to say a couple last things. I think some more people should volunteer to Pam's call for people to help and organize. I see, unless I'm missing something, I'm the only one who's put my name forward. We need people. to help out this. I know we're all busy, blah, 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 but I spend 40 hours a week on the left lane. I'm sure you've got a few hours a week to help out. You know, the talents of many can really bring some good things. And the second thing is, I sort of only, this is my first meeting that I've attended of this group. It would be really helpful just to sort of give at least 90 seconds, Pam, on the way this group is organized, you know, sort of what its goals are. Maybe it's going to be in transition, changing to a new thing. But I do think it's quite important that we really reach out to new people. I'm a journalist. That's what I do all the time, is writing. And I think we really have to, I mean, one of the big problems of the left is that some self-appointed leaders sort of control things. And if you're not in that silo, you don't hear about things, you don't get invited, you don't get to talk. We want to break that down by bringing in people who are really pissed off about capitalism and want to change things. I'm personally, I've spent the last 3.5 years working on a group called Get PR Done. I know some people are not in favor of that. I think it's no cure-all, but it is the one way that the left electorally can get forward, is by having a PR system of voting. I mean, it's no surprise that in all the European countries that have PR, there is left parties, you know, of different strengths. And here, the United States and Canada, where I'm from, in fact, there's no left party. There is a correlation between the voting system and whether there's a left party or not. And no left party, I'm convinced, can go very far. Yeah, the Greens they're not really left wing, but they got 4 people for this. They're not going to get to 25 next time. That's what the what the first past the post voting system does. It's a duopoly. It's anti-democratic. It keeps the big 2 in power. I've got lots more to say, but if you want to, we're having a good discussion right now. Just you put in Google the left lane, and you can join. You can see a group. We're having a discussion about this a thing we brought up today on the response to the election. So really glad to be here.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks for joining us this evening. We've just got Nigel. I think we'll make Nigel the last contribution this evening, and then I'm going to invite Felicity and Dave to make some closing comments, and I'll ask Roger Silverman to sum up. I mean, I realise some people are starting to get off now, and we really don't want you to miss the end of the meeting. So, Nigel, would you like to come in, please?
Yes, I'll be very brief. It was interesting before these elections that Tusk and the Workers' Party group, well, Tusk organised a conference down in Birmingham, which I went to. The Workers' Party group, Workers' Party of Britain, were committed themselves to avoiding standing against Tusk, you know, and vice versa. There appears to be none of that in this election. I've looked through a number of seats, and the Workers' Party stood clearly against Dave Nellis, for example, in Coventry. So they didn't honour that at all. A lot of people on the left have a lot of problems with the Workers' Party, and I think it's something we have to think about if we're going to talk about a new Workers' Party. How you orientate towards the left. I personally don't think it's looking that way. I think Tusk behaved much more, if you like, in a more credible way, although their results were really bad. They didn't break through at all, as far as I could tell from the constituencies I've looked at. So yeah, I think I mean, I've always been interested in cross-community work. We set up a community council in York around the Corbyn era, where we brought all of the groups together. We did the same with the climate change movement, and worked very effectively there. But I mean, that was kind of cut short by COVID, really. And the point being, it wasn't really with a purpose to lead. So although we got a lot of interest, a lot of people involved, a bit like Enough is Enough, you know, which got very active in the valley where I live here in Calderdale. You know, that's kind of run out of steam. We're now involved with the you know, the Palestine solidarity movements and so on. So one thing kind of turns to another and turns to another and turns to another. We need a kind of consistent, as someone said, anti-capitalist message. That was very popular, as Dominic said, very popular during the climate strikes. Very, very strong support for that idea amongst very, very young people. We need a clear, if you like, uncomplicated message. An independent stood in Halifax, but unfortunately the Workers' Party of Britain stood late against her. And so I thought she did very well. But, I talked to her about having a follow-up meeting and trying to build something around here. I think she was disappointed at the result, and her morale's been sapped a bit. Yeah, and we've tried the building, meetings before the elections around bringing people together, fairly unsuccessfully, must be said. I think now, as Pam would have said before, because I was working with Pam, now we're in a different situation. We're in a situation we've got more time. We can be more coordinated, and let's see, and also reach out to other groups that already exist. I was pleased to hear there's someone here who'd been involved with Left Unity, and of course many of the comrades will have been involved in other organisations too. So that reaching out process really needs to be made. And broadly, I mean, people who stand on streets selling newspapers, I've done plenty of it. I have a lot of respect for people who get out and work in communities, but I'm not a lot of respect for people who are sectarians. So that's something we've got to we've got to look at, and how we're gonna get that message, and how we're going to bring people with us. Listening's been mentioned, those kind of things, and being open, not being too deterministic in our ideas, but being clear where the red lines are. Let's be frank, comrades. We've got to be clear on that. So there's some tolerance required as well as principle. That's all.
Okay, thanks very much, Nigel. Right, so if we can now go to Felicity, followed by Dave. If you could just make some closing comment, perhaps as near to 3 or 4 minutes as you can, if that's okay. You there, Felicity? Felicity? Right.
It's all right now. They were saying the host won't let you unmute.
What's going on there? Right.
I don't know what's going on with my camera either. First of all, I want to say we need to keep the conversation going. It's been a useful and constructive conversation. It needs to continue. The second thing I'd say is the youngsters are organised. People say this is an older people's meeting, but there are lots and lots of youngsters out there who are very firmly anti-capitalist and very much know what Starmer's about. And we do need to build links with young people. We need to plan. We need to be thinking ahead, thinking not just a year, but 2-3 years ahead, because we know that Starmer says he's going to make everything happen by pushing growth, and capitalism is not going to like him doing that. It's not going to happen. And all kinds of crises are going to happen. So to stop people feeling that they're completely at sea, there has to be the voice of socialism put over in the local areas. WhatsApp groups are fine, but also by leaflets through the door to people as to put socialist ideas forward, not preaching at them, but on the basis of the kind of issues that they want. Left Unity is very much trying to build as many links as possible to as many groups as possible, to try and bring people in together to talk. We're not saying we know the answers, but we're saying, we've got a lot of contacts. We can bring people in together to talk and to discuss. Working on the street, never mind selling a newspaper that's, decided by a small group of self-selected people in the middle of the organisation, but working on the street in campaigns, I think, is essential for any socialist mental health. You have to actually realise that you can talk to people, and they do listen, and they do tell you things, and you can learn from them. And it's a way of working. The biggest part of the campaigning that I do at the moment is the NHS. Any of you interested in the NHS campaigns, please get in touch. It's going to be absolutely crucial that we're organised on that issue as widely as we possibly can be. and we put forward ideas. We took in Merseyside and Cheshire, which is our ICS area, we took a big van around with great big slogans about the NHS during the election. And when people were saying, they're all the same, there's nothing we can do about it, our answer was, well, how did women get the vote? How did slaves get to end slavery? Don't think that if you can't, that people make the change, and you've got to be that kind of a person that makes the change. And it was very, very well received. We had a lovely time. And as I say, that it feeds into your own enthusiasm for the campaigning if you're getting out talking to people and getting a response from it. But I mean, on the issue of Northern Ireland, I probably would be joining you in campaigning for a workers' position. I still, though, Liverpool's has its own sectarian past. I am still delighted to see unionists getting a battering, like I'm delighted to see Tories getting a battering, even though no Starmer's not going to be any better for us. But I thank you for the meeting. A final point I'd say is, if you want to actually talk to young people, it's got to be an eco-socialist approach. It matters so much to young people. The idea that they're not going to, that there won't be a viable ecosystem in this country or in other countries unless there's action on the climate is a very basic issue. And if anyone's going to be in Durham this weekend, I hopefully bump into you at the miners' rally. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening. I'll be at the miners' gala this weekend, so I'll catch up with you.
Great.
Dave, would you like to sum up now?
Yeah, I won't need my 4 or 5 minutes, he promised. Yeah, it's not just our intervention is, of course, not just agitational, it is also organisational. And so Felicity talks about keeping the conversation going and about keeping the organisation going. And in Brighton and Hove, that's exactly what we're going to do. Tomorrow night, we've got a meeting of the 15 people of the core campaign, the 15 people who did the most and organised some of the 14 different WhatsApp groups. Oh, did I learn? My God, I've never been in a campaign like this before. It was a young people's campaign. So it's the organisation will continue. We've got a social event coming up, probably 50 to 100 people will come in a couple of weeks' time. So the message is we carry on. And we're also talking about actually fighting the next election. We are not primarily an electoralist body. There's plenty of critiques of electoralism, but there's also plenty of critiques about why it's useful to win elections. So somebody, I forget who, said, we won't get 25 MPs. You don't know. I mean, something, I don't want to bore you, but Lenin, a favourite quote of mine, there are decades when nothing happens. There are weeks when decades happen. Who knows if in 5 years or 3 years' time, we might not get a large number of independent socialist, independent left members of parliament. And that brings me to my final point, which is about the United Front. A number of comrades have mentioned that. And I want to pick up on something Dominic said quite very wisely, I thought. A lot of these young folk, a lot of the people who've never been involved in party politics or electoral politics before, they're single or double issue folk, National Health Service, Gaza, ecosystem, etc., or various other, many multifold different little campaigns. And as Dominic said, and as, if you don't mind me quoting, as Marx and Trotsky and Rosa Luxemburg have said, our job is to develop class consciousness, is to develop the idea of us being a class for ourselves, working in class interest, not simply an economic, socio-economic bloc. So as Dominic was saying, that's the third time I've mentioned Dominic, we have to, in our meetings, in our agitations, in our organisations, we have to locate those individual tragedies and dramas and events within a Marxist analysis. I don't suppose more than a tiny percentage of people on the Gaza protests actually are aware that that is as a result, what's happening in Gaza is a result of capitalist imperialism, and we can give that and many other issues, locate those issues and horrific developments, including poverty. I grew up in poverty, including poverty, put those developments within an anti-capitalist, a Marxist analysis. Thank you, comrades. I really enjoyed this meeting. Great meeting.
Thanks very much, Dave. So can we go to Roger now for a summing up?
Yeah, thank you, comrades. I think it's been an absolutely brilliant and inspiring meeting, and thank all the comrades for your participation. I'd like to say first something in reply to John Donne. John Donne represents absolutely the most heroic traditions of the miners' strike, the most heroic traditions of the working class. And I understand why, after all the defeats and all the betrayals, why and also all the vices of the sectarian groups and so on, why he's a little skeptical. But I would like to say why I think actually is a thirst for a united mass fight back. Yes, we don't see signs of a mass workers' party at the present time, but I think what we're seeing now is the calm before the storm. The atmosphere is absolutely electric. Why do I think that the prospects are so overripe for a new mass workers' party? Because, as they say in science, nature abhors a vacuum. So also politics abhors a vacuum, and there is a vacuum. The one huge gap in politics, in society today, is a party of the working class and a party straining for a new socialist society. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, let's look at the significance of this so-called landslide victory of the Labour Party. Labour had the support, and do comrades realise this? Labour had the support of just 20.1% of the registered voters in this country. Even among the less than 60% who actually voted, Labour and the Tory party together got just 57.4% of the vote. That's the lowest, I think comrades mentioned, since we had universal suffrage. The lowest turnout and the lowest vote for the main parties. Labour's vote has dropped from 12.9 million in 2017, which represented a huge advance under Corbyn over the last few elections, to 10.3 million in 2019, to 9.7 million in 2024. So the Labour base is slipping away. That's one of the reasons why there's a vacuum, and one of the reasons why that vacuum needs to be filled sooner or later by a workers' party. How did Labour win an overwhelming majority of seats? Only because in 2019 the Tories had an electoral pact with Farage's Brexit party, which gave them a huge vote, 14 million votes. This time, true, it had gone down to under 11 million votes, but the total vote for the Tories plus Reform still exceeded Labour's by 1.2 million. What a fantastic landslide victory of the Labour Party, as the press are trying to portray it. The most significant features of this general election result are: one, the record low turnout; two, the high vote for none of the above candidates. And that again is a sign that there is a vacuum, there is a gap, there is which needs to be filled by a genuine mass party of the working class. But we had not just the votes for Reform, but the votes for the Lib Dems, who got their highest number of seats, I think, in living memory; the Independents, who got about, I think, 9; Corbyn's huge majority; the near misses in Ilford and Chingford and some of the other areas that comrades have mentioned; and of course, most ominously, the 4 million votes for the racist, far-right reform party. Now, Britain, I'm afraid we have to see this. It's falling in line with the rest of Europe and with the USA and beyond of the resurgence in desperation and despair of the failure of the left, of the development of a far right. Despite their setback in Sunday's second round vote, the French far right almost doubled their representation in Parliament. And the far right are in government, from Finland and Sweden to Italy and Portugal, and soon perhaps in Germany and in Spain. And in Britain, the Tory split is coming very soon, and a realignment, and maybe even a fusion of the two parties. Johnson has already purged ruthlessly the old patrician establishment Tories, the Clarks and the Heseltines and so on. It's the end of centuries of traditional Tory rule. But despite its own hollow parliamentary victory, it's the end of Labour too, as a party that even nominally reflects the needs and aspirations of the working class. Because, as I say, there's this huge gap in British politics. The 500,000 who surged into Labour under Corbyn, we need a mass left alternative. And we know that however much we love and respect Jeremy Corbyn, he never had any intention of creating an alternative party. Having, to his utter surprise, won the leadership, he considered it his responsibility and his priority to hold the party together and to avoid a split. And it was, of course, a responsibility and objective ruthlessly and viciously stamped out by the right wing. He stood as an independent and got a tremendous victory, which itself is a guarantee, or at least a testimony to the probable success of a new mass left party on a national scale. But he did that not in defiance of Starmer, but in the hope of reinstatement into the fold, as had happened previously in a different era with Ken Livingstone. And Galloway too, I agree with comrades who say he doesn't offer any hope. He's shamelessly running after the white xenophobic vote. I support British values, British troops, stopping immigration and all this sort of thing, and simultaneously chasing the Muslim vote. Not only quite correctly expressing solidarity with the population of Gaza, but also defending the horrible medieval theocratic Iranian regime. So the same with all the myriad new formations, all striving to fill the gap and unite the left, with the best of intentions, certainly with good intentions, but they lack a solid organic base. They revolve around well-meaning individuals. They remain on the sidelines and often in competition with each other. And as Steve said at the beginning, and some comrades repeated it, the point is we want a programme and not a leader. We're after a programme and not a leader. We want a political banner, a political way forward, and not just revolving around this or that charismatic or sometimes not so charismatic individuals. So I think the scepticism that some comrades feel is misplaced, because look what we've seen in the last year or two. We've had a rise in strikes and in trade union militancy, and look who was involved mainly: railway workers, nurses, doctors, teachers, lawyers. And you know something? None of these groups of workers are affiliated to the Labour Party. And they will find, as did the trade unionists in Britain 125 years ago, that they need a political voice. And where will they turn? Are they going to turn to Starmer's Labour Party? They will have to find a way to organise themselves and to get representation politically. And then what about the other sections of the working class who are still organised in Labour Party affiliated unions? What about Unite, Unison, the GMB, etc., etc.? Yes, it won't be the top union bureaucrats of these organisations who will force a break with Starmer, but surely there will be a growing outcry from active rank-and-file militants within these unions saying, why are we paying our hard-earned wages, our hard-earned affiliation fees to this anti-union bosses government? Maybe it won't be immediately, maybe it'll take some time for that to percolate, but we need to outgrow the curse of harmful, childish sectarian traditions. In my constituency, for instance, we had 6 competing left candidates, all under various guises. And we stuck, this is Newham I'm talking about, Stratford and Bow, we stuck solidly with Steve Headley, who was an exemplary candidate, the chair of the local trades council, a proven, dedicated, militant trade union leader. And that was against all the assorted parvenus who had national campaigns and came in and really parachuted into the constituency without consulting the local activists or the local trade union militants. In France, it was the growing threat from the far right which overcame the old sectarian divisions to join forces and to establish a united front. But here too, despite the alarming growth of the far rights throughout Europe and beyond, the workers are not defeated. What can we do? We can organise, mobilise, campaign, link up our struggles together, launch a rank-and-file campaign for the creation of a party really representing the interests of the working class, the interests of Labour. The cartoonist of the 30s and 40s, David Lowe, who I think was the greatest cartoonist, only perhaps rivaled by Alan Hardman later, but David Lowe used to draw the trade unions as a cart horse, powerful, solid, but very slow and very ponderous. Let's plan for a conference of activists without regard to political affiliation, but trade union militants, activists, campaigners in and out, within the trade unions and in other mass organisations, tenants' organisations, particular lobby groups, and so on. Let's get a chart to plan and build up support for a conference of activists without regard to their political affiliation, members of this or that group, political organisation, sect, it doesn't matter. But to give the cart horse a spur to take that step and build a mass party of the working class. So thank you, comrades.
Thank you very much, Roger, for that summing up. Well, that's the end of the discussion for today. From the point of view of the chair, I've got to compliment the comrades on the very comradely manner in which everybody has treated each other. I've noticed that people actually are interacting, people commenting on what each other is saying. And I see a complete absence of some of the sectarianism that I've observed in various left groups and organisations I've drifted through. So I feel very optimistic. I think this is a very, very good start. I'm very optimistic about the future. You will be hearing from us fairly soon. Keep an eye on your spam box because your inbox may not recognise the email address initially. And we'll be in touch very soon. Please consider getting involved with the committee to organise this. We do need some more people on. And respond to that effect when you get your email. So I just basically say thanks very much for your attendance. It's been a great meeting, solidarity, and we'll see you again very soon.